One of the many uses of the comma is to introduce and close out parenthetical information, but learning how to effectively and appropriately offset this kind of information can be a little tricky. So let's learn. What is parenthetical information? It's also known as an interjection or relative information. There's a few different terms for it, but when writing, we sometimes add non-essential information to enhance clarity or provide context. And this information, if it's in the middle of a sentence, is typically introduced and closed out with a comma. All right, so let's take a look at an example. Here we've got Domino's Pizza isn't as good as Naples Pizza. We add a second piece of information with Domino's. It is the world's largest pizza chain. In all, we've got 14 words here. That is a lot of words, and we always want to write concisely in academic writing. What we notice here is that the word Domino's appears twice. It's the subject of two sentences. So we could take one of those sentences and turn it into an interjection that's put in the second sentence. So let's reorder these ideas and begin by simply saying Domino's Pizza. Now we need a comma, the world's largest pizza chain. Another comma isn't as good as Naples. What we see here is that the two commas open and close this interjection, so the reader sees that in between the two commas is a parenthetical element or an interjection or a non-essential element, and on either side of that before and after is the main clause of the sentence. We are only using 11 words here instead of 14, so we've reduced our word count, and the commas allow the reader to process that information. However, there might be an issue if the parenthetical element is a list that has commas in it. And in this context, this is where we're going to use what's known as the em dash. Let's take a look at another example. Several items can enhance a Subway sandwich, period, full stop, end of sentence. These items include spinach, comma, pickles, comma, and tomatoes. So we've got three items, spinach, pickles, and tomatoes. Now, in all, there's 14 words here again. That's a lot of words. We have these items referring back to the several items mentioned in the first sentence. So we can definitely do something to reduce word count and make this more concise by adding an interjection. We begin with several items and then we add a comma to introduce our parenthetical information, our interjection, including spinach, comma, pickles, comma, and tomatoes. And then we have another comma closing out the interjection where we return to the sentence, can enhance a Subway sandwich. Now we have a parenthetical comma opening the interjection. We have another comma closing the interjection. We also have commas within. This comma here, after spinach, is introducing the second item, and this comma is introducing the third item. The problem here is when the reader sees the first comma and recognizes it as a comma that's opening an interjection, they might think that the next comma closes out that interjection, and it doesn't. It's got a different function. So the question becomes, how do we avoid confusion in this context? The answer is the em dash. Now, if we have an em dash opening and closing that, the reader will clearly see where the interjection is beginning and ending, and they'll be clear as to where the complete main clause is. So this is why we want to use the em dash is when we're offsetting a list, because if we use commas, it'll be too confusing for the reader. We've also managed to reduce this to 12 words, and that's a little extra bonus because we've made our writing more concise. If you feel that a list is a little bit too complicated for the purposes of an interjection or parenthetical information, you can simply take that relative information and put it at the end of the sentence. Let's take a look at how that works and the potential pitfalls of that approach. Here, we begin by saying several items can enhance a Subway sandwich. We add a comma and then including spinach, comma, pickles, comma, and tomatoes. In this context, we're able to distinguish where the interjection comes, and it's at the end of the sentence, so there's no need to lead off with a em dash, and the reader is very clear also as to what the main clause of the sentence is. This works fairly well in this context, but there is a potential problem with this strategy in some cases, and that is syntactic ambiguity. Now, let's say we're writing a sentence that begins with several professionals help members of the community. We add our comma, and then we bring in the interjection, including nurses, comma, teachers, comma, and social workers. So we have our three items. We have nurses, teachers, and social workers. The problem here, once the reader sees this list of examples, is they don't necessarily know if this applies to the professionals or to members of the community. So we need to reframe this to make it clear to the reader that the nurses, teachers, and social workers are examples, in this case, of professionals, not community members. So how do we do that? We rely on the M dash. We begin by saying several professionals, M dash, including, now we bring in our nurses, comma, teachers, comma, and our social workers. Then we close that out with another M dash, help members of the community. The reader sees that nurses, teachers, and social workers are examples of professionals, not members of the community. And this eliminates the syntactic ambiguity, which is to say, the sequence of the words now has a very clear and definitive meaning. Let us do a quick summary now of what we've just covered. Commas can be used to offset parenthetical information. And that is to say, if you want to interject a relative element into the sentence, you can open and close that with a comma. That informs the reader that you're pausing the main clause and shows them when you're returning back to the main clause. And this is an effective way to help reduce word count. We're often trying to impart multiple pieces of information about the same thing, and this is an effective way to do that in a concise and clear manner. Parenthetical information is a list of three or more items, then you might consider putting that information at the end of the sentence. Or if there is syntactic ambiguity in that context, use the M dash to offset the information by opening and closing the parenthetical with the M dash instead of the comma. And that way the reader won't become confused as to which commas are serving what function. Hopefully that was clear, but if you do have any questions, just leave them in the comments section below and we'll do our very best to provide you with an answer in a timely fashion. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.